Leah stood by the window, staring out at the quiet street below. The rain had just stopped, leaving droplets of water clinging to the windowpane like memories. The apartment was still, save for the ticking clock, a reminder that time moved forward, whether she was ready or not. The apartment, once filled with the laughter and voices of those she loved, now felt empty, even though she was surrounded by memories. The absence of her husband Ethan had left a silence that filled every corner of the room, a silence that seemed to echo louder with every passing day. Leah had never imagined her life would turn out this way. When she and Ethan first met, their connection was undeniable, like two puzzle pieces that fit together perfectly. They had built a life full of laughter, shared dreams, and moments of quiet contentment. But life had a way of shifting, of pulling things apart when you least expected it. Leah's mind wandered back to the last time they spoke, the night before Ethan left. He had told her he was going to visit his family for a while, but the truth was, he had been carrying a secret for months, something neither of them had wanted to face. "I'm sorry, Leah," Ethan had said, looking at her with tears in his eyes. "I don't know how to fix this, but I think it's time we both let go." The words still echoed in her mind, even though the memory was fading, like the sound of a once familiar song that was slowly becoming a distant hum. Leah's life had been on pause since that night. She continued to go through the motions: work, errands, the occasional dinner with friends, but it was as if a part of her had gone missing. She found herself searching for him in the little things: the way the coffee smelled in the morning, the way they used to laugh at their inside jokes, the shared glances that said everything without saying a word. But now, all of it was gone, and in its place was a quiet loneliness that crept in when she least expected it. Was she angry? She wondered. Or was she just heartbroken? Leah had always believed that love was a choice. She had believed in the idea that two people could overcome anything if they were willing to fight for it. But as she sat in the stillness of their apartment, she realized that sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes life changes in ways you can't control, and the love you once had begins to fade like an echo. It was late one evening when Leah found an old journal of Ethan's tucked away on the bookshelf. It was one of the things he had left behind, hidden amongst the things that no longer felt like a part of him. She opened the journal carefully, her fingers brushing against the pages. As she read his words, she realized just how much Ethan had been struggling in the silence of their marriage. His writing was filled with sorrow and hope, with the weight of things left unsaid. There were pages upon pages about his dreams, his fears, and his longing for someone to make him feel whole again. "Leah," one entry began, "I don't know how to say this, but I feel like we're drifting. I want to find a way back to you, but I don't know how." The words stung, but they also gave Leah clarity. Ethan hadn't left because he didn't love her anymore. He had left because he didn't know how to love himself. The space between them had grown too wide, and neither of them had known how to bridge the gap. For the first time in months, Leah cried. She cried for the lost moments, for the love that had slipped through their fingers, for the life they had tried to build but couldn't. And in the quiet of her apartment, with the journal in her lap, she made a decision. Leah decided that she could no longer wait for something that might never come. She could no longer hold on to a memory, pretending that things would go back to the way they once were. It was time to let go not just of Ethan, but of the version of herself that had been waiting in the past. With trembling hands, she closed the journal and placed it back on the shelf. She didn't need to read his words anymore to understand. She had her own story to write now. The next morning, Leah woke up with a sense of calm she hadn't felt in months. She took a deep breath and smiled at the sunlight streaming through the window. There was still pain, yes, but there was also the possibility of something new. She didn't have to have all the answers yet. She didn't have to know what came next. But she knew one thing for sure. She was going to find peace within herself again. And that was the first step. Months passed, and Leah's life began to shift. Slowly, she rediscovered the things that made her happy: painting, hiking in the mountains, meeting new people. And while the hurt never fully disappeared, she learned to embrace it as part of her journey, rather than something that defined her. One afternoon, as she sat in a cafe reading a book, she received a message from Ethan. It wasn't a long message, but it was enough. "I hope you're okay, Leah. I think about you often. I'll always be grateful for our time together." Leah sat back in her chair, reading the words again. She smiled softly to herself. She didn't need to reply right away. In fact, she didn't need to reply at all. For the first time in a long while, she felt free. She had let go of the past, and in doing so, she had given herself the gift of moving forward. Leah realized that goodbye wasn't just for the people we lose. It was also for the pieces of ourselves that we need to let go of in order to grow. And in that quiet moment, she understood that this chapter of her life was closing. But it wasn't the end, it was the beginning of something new.